Did you know that Hashimoto's disease is the most prevalent autoimmune condition worldwide? It's true. And on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, we are sitting down with a Hashimoto's disease expert, Dr. Anshul Gupta, to not only discuss what Hashimoto's is, but how it can actually go about being reversed. We're going to cue our introduction and we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and today we are sitting down with a world-renowned Hashimoto's disease expert to dive deep into what Hashimoto's disease is, why it is so prevalent worldwide, and what can be done to reverse it. But before we do, we have an ask for you.
Did you know that the number one way to make me, Julie Cates, very, very happy is to buy me chocolate?
I knew that.
Okay, great. And the number one way that you can make this podcast happy and support our podcast is to leave a very simple review. Most of the time it takes less than a minute, but you don't even know how important and how potent that review will be for us growing our message, growing our podcast, and getting more and more amazing guests on like we're going to have today. So if you wouldn't mind hitting that pause button and scrolling down on Apple Podcasts, give us that rating and review, and we would truly, truly appreciate it, and it's going to help us so much.
So today we are sitting down with Dr. Anshul Gupta. Dr. Anshul Gupta is a best-selling author, speaker, researcher, and world expert in Hashimoto's disease. He educates people worldwide on reversing Hashimoto's disease. He is a board-certified family medicine physician with advanced certifications in functional medicine, peptide therapy, as well as being fellowship trained in integrative medicine. He has worked at the prestigious Cleveland Clinic Department of Functional Medicine alongside Dr. Mark Hyman. He has helped thousands of patients to reverse their health issues by using the concepts of functional medicine.
Well, Dr. Gupta, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to our show.
Thank you, Charlie, for having me over here. It's a pleasure. You guys are doing an amazing job of sharing great content and information to keep people healthy. So I'm really privileged over here to share my bit of information with people to help them in their health journey.
Thank you. Yes, I'm really excited about our conversation today because I know one of your specialties is working with people that have Hashimoto's disease. And Hashimoto's, to my understanding, is very prevalent. But I want to know from your perspective and with your experience, let's kind of take a step back and just start with what is Hashimoto's disease?
Absolutely. So Hashimoto's disease is actually an autoimmune disease of your thyroid gland, where your body is producing antibodies which are leading to the destruction of the thyroid gland. And what happens is that this destruction is happening in the background at a very slow process. So sometimes it might take weeks to months to years finally to show the symptoms and actually to show in the lab work. And what the lab work shows is that most people develop what we call as hypothyroidism or low thyroid. And that's where people get diagnosed with it and they get started on a medicine to kind of supplement your body with the thyroid hormone. But in reality, the conventional medicine is not doing anything to help improve the underlying process of Hashimoto's disease, which is the autoimmunity in there. So that's the thing that a lot of people don't know about, that, first of all, whether they have Hashimoto's disease or not. They just know that, okay, well, I have low thyroid, but beyond that, they have never been tested for Hashimoto's disease. In reality, Hashimoto's disease is the most common autoimmune condition world over. So it's
really
very, very prevalent. Yes, it is not only prevalent in kind of United States or any part of the country. It's like prevalent the whole world.
Wow. And so it's not just like the most prevalent kind of thyroid condition, but autoimmune overall.
That is correct. Autoimmune overall.
Wow.
Hashimoto's is the number one autoimmune condition. And just imagine it is actually underdiagnosed because most of the people have not even been checked for Hashimoto's disease. So we have there is millions of people who have not been diagnosed with this condition and they are walking just down the street, not knowing that the actual problem in the thyroid is Hashimoto's.
So what are some symptoms that somebody may experience that they'd be like, okay, I should go get my thyroid checked, or that may lead their provider to say, yeah, let's run some labs to get your thyroid checked?
So unfortunately, the symptoms are many. And they are so
Sure.
common symptoms that a lot of people might think, oh, well, I do have it. And
Mm,
that's also actually a good thing, that at least this condition is giving you symptoms, so that if you do have those, then it kind of should be a trigger for you to get that blood work.
okay.
So the symptoms actually starts from all the way, every part of your body needs thyroid hormone.
Mm,
So every part of the body do get affected with it. So it starts from the head, that a lot of people will complain with brain fog, that they're forgetting things, their memory is not that great, or they have ADHD like symptoms, that they're not able to concentrate on things. Then it comes to your gut, where a lot of people will go through either constipation, diarrhea, bloating issues. They get often diagnosed or labeled with IBS,
mm,
while in reality, actually, it's the thyroid which is causing the problem. Then a lot of people feel tired or fatigued, that they don't have enough energy. A lot of people have weight gain issues or not able to lose weight.
mm.
A lot of females will go through infertility issues, that they're not able to conceive because of that. A lot of mood changes happen, that they either feel depressed or anxious or stressed out a lot of times. Then
Mm,
hair fall issues or hair thinning issues, or like cold intolerance, that they feel cold all the time. Skin issues with skin feeling dry, or kind of thickening of the skin.
mm.
So a whole bunch of symptoms are
Yeah.
present.
No, you're right. They're very widespread. And like you're saying, it affects all areas of the body. That's crazy. And what you said kind of in the beginning also stuck with me is oftentimes the Hashimoto's itself are present, maybe before the thyroid levels get low enough that somebody may even notice, substantial symptoms or significant symptoms. And so I could see that being actually a big issue for a lot of people, where it's like, okay, yeah, this condition has been present for years maybe, and then now all of a sudden you're finally symptomatic, and so now it's I would imagine that would make the treatment and possibly reversal of it that much more difficult, because it's been underlying for so long. Have you seen that in your experience, or what have you seen as far as like the number of people that are walking around possibly with Hashimoto's, but are relatively asymptomatic?
Yes. So again, the problem is again in the testing piece of it, because we are not
Mm,
testing this condition. So a lot of people are not being diagnosed at early stages of Hashimoto's disease. So let's talk a little bit about the testing piece of it. So actually, people
yeah.
might have an understanding what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Because, like once you have these symptoms, or if you go to a regular doctor or a conventional doctor and ask for your thyroid being checked, the
Mm,
only test you are going to get is what we call as a TSH, which
mm.
is the thyroid stimulating hormone. Now that test, if it is abnormal, then you do have a thyroid condition according to them. If it is normal, then there is no testing done beyond it.
Mhm.
But in reality, it should, to do a complete thyroid profile, we should not only check TSH, we should also check free T3 and free T4. Now, these T3 and T4 are the actual thyroid hormone being produced by your thyroid gland.
Mm.
So by knowing those levels, you will know whether you are hyper or hypo. That's the first situation. Now,
Okay.
these tests, even though they're checking your thyroid, are not checking for Hashimoto's disease. For Hashimoto's disease, you need to check antibody levels. So the two
Uh,
antibody levels are called TPO, which is called thyroid peroxidase antibodies. And the second one is TG, which is the thyroglobulin antibodies.
mm,
The good part is that each and every lab around there can easily do these tests. So you don't
mm.
have to go to a fancy lab. The same blood draw that you gave to check your thyroid or TSH, the same blood can actually check these antibodies. And
Okay.
if you have elevated amount of antibodies in your blood, that is diagnostic of Hashimoto's. You don't need any ultrasound, you don't need any biopsies or anything to confirm Hashimoto's. If you do have antibodies, bingo, you do have Hashimoto's.
Okay.
Now, the reason a lot of conventional doctors don't order Hashimoto's labs is that because they don't have a treatment available for Hashimoto's disease. The
Mm.
only treatment available is that if you do have low thyroid, they can give you a thyroid medicine, but they cannot do anything with these antibodies.
Gotcha.
According to the conventional medicine, these antibody levels will keep on rising up and up. And these antibodies are going to destroy your thyroid gland. So ultimately, you are going to get hypothyroid according to them, and your thyroid is going to get destroyed completely, and nothing could be done.
Mm.
And that was the biggest horror that I was facing with, when I started researching Hashimoto's disease, is that what can we do? And suddenly, like the answer I was getting from all the conventional endocrine doctors or specialists is that nothing can be done about it.
Mm.
But there is actually a good amount of research that suggests that you can do a lot of things to lower these antibodies and actually improve Hashimoto's disease. Now, obviously, as you suggested, depending on people where they are in that stage. Now, if people have Hashimoto's disease for 15, 20 years, it might not be possible for them to completely reverse it because their thyroid might be completely destroyed.
Mhm.
But with my experience, what I've seen is that, at early stages of 5 years or 10 years, there is still a very good chance that they can improve or they can save their thyroid still.
Okay, this
The
is
worst
fascinating.
part,
But before you get into that, I just want to recap because this is fascinating. So what you're saying is typically the thyroid test that is done is for TSH, and if those levels come back normal, then it's like, oh, you're good, you're in the clear. Okay, if they come back abnormal, then it's like, all right, there might be something going on. That's typically where things stop. But you're saying there also needs to be a T3 and T4 test run that you can use with the same blood, as well as then checking for the antibodies. And if the antibodies are there, then you're saying, okay, cool, like that. Then now there is evidence to say, okay, there's Hashimoto's present. Because what is typically done is if it's believed Hashimoto's is present, or if the thyroid is low, it's essentially given like a thyroid replacement to say, okay, cool, well, let's get your thyroid back up, but it's not doing anything about the antibodies. And where I think you're about to go is what you have found is like there are actually things that can be done about the antibodies. So you're not just taking a thyroid replacement and at the same time the antibodies are still present, still attacking your thyroid. You're saying, let's do something about the antibodies, and then it can give your thyroid a chance, depending how long those antibodies have been present, to heal, to, possibly start functioning at a more normal level. Am I recapping that correctly?
that is correct. Absolutely correct.
Awesome. So cool. Okay, cool. Now let's go to where I think you're about to jump into, which is like, all right, how do we go about addressing these antibodies?
Absolutely. But before this, I also want to kind of point out to people is that you're not doing just these things to lower the antibody for Hashimoto's. What research suggests is that once you get one autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's disease, you are bound to get a second autoimmune condition in your lifetime if you don't do anything about this underlying autoimmunity. So it's not only doing something right now for the present condition, but also doing something to prevent a future condition that is brewing in there. So that's very important to know for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's key. So like when I was 9, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which, is an autoimmune condition. When I was 13, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is another autoimmune condition, kind of the opposite of Hashimoto's, where, my thyroid ends up being overactive, but exactly to what you're saying is like, hey, I can take insulin and everything to help manage my diabetes, but I'm not doing anything about the antibodies. And, I can take medication to help, manage my thyroid, but I'm not doing anything about the antibodies.
Exactly. So, like exactly the same example as you gave in yourself, we see it day in and day out with people. And unfortunately, most of the doctors don't tell this to their patients when they get diagnosed with that autoimmune condition. Hey, look, you need to pay attention to your body because you are looking for another autoimmune condition if you don't do anything about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So very important information and very empowering information for people, because that definitely is a very big motivation for them to take action right now to improve their.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I can totally see this. So that's great to know. So what actions can people start taking?
Great. So what research suggests is that Hashimoto's disease happens because of an interplay between your genetic makeup and the environment around you, right? So that's the thing that we know about Hashimoto's. Beyond that, the research is limited, right? So we cannot change the genetic pool, right? Of most of the folks. But as I said, this requires two different things. One is genes and one is the environment. So we cannot control the genes, but we can control the environment. So my research has suggested that there are 5 potential root causes which are playing a role in Hashimoto's disease. And when they interact with the genes of a particular person, then that causes this condition. So the 5 main root causes are first is food sensitivities. Now, food is medicine, but wrong food can definitely lead to the triggering of Hashimoto's disease. So the processed food that we have, the gluten, the dairy, The lot of sugary foods that we have, in our diet currently or for the last decade definitely kind of has led to an explosion of Hashimoto's disease. So that's a very big major root cause, food sensitivities. The second one is what we call as nutritional deficiencies. Thyroid gland needs a lot of different vitamins and minerals to function and produce thyroid hormone. Most of us are low in those vitamins and minerals like selenium, zinc, vitamin D, magnesium, whole bunch of things. And that again leads to Hashimoto's disease. The third one is stress. And I'm not just talking about mental stress, I'm talking about physical stress, emotional stress, spiritual stress, mental stress. Our world today is much more stressful than what it was before, because we have to manage so many different kind of things. Our work life, our home life, everything, like adds to this stress pool. So certainly that is a very big trigger, of Hashimoto's. Then comes toxins. In the last decade or so, we are pouring more and more chemicals into our environment. Each and every day, there is a new chemical which has been produced, which, adds to the toxin pools, whether it is heavy metals like lead, mercury, arsenic in there, or the mold toxins, which, we get exposed to in our workplaces or home or anywhere else, or the environmental toxins, the insecticides, the pesticides, all the chemicals which are using, into our home environment. All of those things definitely trigger Hashimoto's disease and play a very important role. And the last one is the infections. We have certain infections which have been associated with Hashimoto's. One of the most common ones is Epstein-Barr virus, which we call as also infectious mononucleosis. There are research studies which shows that the reactivation of Epstein-Barr virus does cause Hashimoto's. We are seeing an increased incidence of Hashimoto's since COVID has hit. So people getting COVID infections again can lead to Hashimoto's. Besides that, several gut-related parasites like blastocystis, like candida infections, again has been associated with Hashimoto's. So five big root causes, five major big categories of root causes, which are playing a role, which causes Hashimoto's disease. Now, what people think is that they only have one root cause, that, okay, well, I got food sensitivities and that is the reason I got Hashimoto's. No, it's much more complicated. Most of the Hashimoto's patients have more than two root causes, which are playing a role together to causing Hashimoto's disease. And if you want to improve that Hashimoto's, then we need to nail down all of the root causes, not just one or the other, so that we can get better with it.
Wow, that's fascinating, because there are so many potential things that can influence this. So not only, the foods that you're eating, whether you're sensitive to those foods, whether you're getting enough of the right nutrients, how your stress levels are, everything that is going on from a toxic load with, again, things that are added to the food, maybe things that are, sprayed on the food, used in the environment. And there are so many things to consider. So where should people start?
I'm a very big proponent of lifestyle changes. So I think lifestyle is definitely the foundation of everything. So that's where I want everybody to start with things. Okay. Because that's not only good for Hashimoto, that's good for everything related to your body, right? So diet. So diet plays a very important role, right? So I have developed this Hashimoto's diet, or what I call as a mitothyroid diet. And it's kind of has two different pillars. One pillar is that remove foods which are bad for your thyroid or Hashimoto's disease. And the second pillar is that include foods which improve your Hashimoto's. Okay. So the first pillar, removing foods which is bad for your Hashimoto's, which includes gluten, dairy, processed foods, and then processed sugars, all of those things, and sometimes in some people, corn and soy might also be a problem. Processed meat is another problem that a lot of people might have. So those are the food that people, if they remove it, they definitely see an improvement in their Hashimoto's, because they're causing a lot of inflammation, causing leaky gut problems, damaging the thyroid. So we definitely need to stay away from them. Then comes to the food, which is actually healing your Hashimoto's. So these are all anti-inflammatory foods that we need to eat. The major ones are non-starchy, colorful vegetables. Okay. All of these vegetables, which we have to include in our diet, have all these different vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, which are helping our Hashimoto's disease. Greens. So eat your green leafy vegetables. They have so much beneficial for your thyroid. Then cruciferous vegetables. Again, a lot of people have been told that cruciferous vegetables are bad for the thyroid. A lot of people are not eating vegetables because they're scared that those vegetables are actually going to make the thyroid worse. Again, this was a research study done decades ago, which showed that some of these cruciferous vegetables come in the category of what we call as goitrogens. which kind of, causes kind of difficult for your body to absorb iodine. And that causes, thyroid disorders. But the 3 decades ago, when first thyroid disorders were diagnosed, the main reason was iodine deficiency in people. And that's the reason people are getting thyroid disorders. Now, with the world over changes in our diet, which adding iodine to our diet and fortifying our food with it, we are not seeing iodine deficiency anymore. But we are not seeing a lesser amount of thyroid disorders. So now, number one issue of thyroid disorder is Hashimoto's disease. So now we cannot use the same old recommendations. So cruciferous vegetables, all these green leafy vegetables have shown improvement in Hashimoto's disease by lowering inflammation, by lowering these antibodies. So a lot of people should be eating a lot of vegetables, especially colorful vegetables, to get all the nutrients in their body. Then good quality protein is very, very important, because again, that is needed for our body. Whether, you eat chicken, fish, or turkey, whether, you eat a vegetarian diet, which includes all these beans, lentils, legumes, all of those things are great sources of protein. So use good quality, clean protein. Then good quality fats. Again, in the last decade, we have kind of bad-mouthed fat so much that, everybody is like on a low-fat diet. What we have done is that we have created this fear of fat, but we have not educated people is that there is good fat and there is bad fat. And we need good fat to survive. 60 to 70% of our brain is made with good fat. So if you don't have fat, we are not going to function. So include that good fat in your diet, whether it's through olive oil, whether it's through coconut oil, whether it is through avocados, through all these great nuts and seeds, through fatty fishes. All of those are good fats. We need to include that because that lowers the inflammation and definitely supports your thyroid gland. And then after that, some gluten-free grains could be useful, like quinoa, like brown rice. So those can again support your body and support your gut health also. These are again an anti-inflammatory foods that the more you include them in your lifestyle, in your diet on the daily basis, that is not only support your thyroid, that lowers inflammation, lowers the antibody levels, and definitely support your thyroid. So that's a very big foundation of starting with the diet for each and every person. Very easily that can be done. And then moving on to the other lifestyle changes. That's where the stress management and the exercising comes into place. So now, stress management is very important. Again, this is the thing that most people think, I don't have stress, right? I can handle stress very well. Now, this is the corporate language we have been told. Stress is good. Stress actually improves our performance, right? But what people don't know is that when we get exposed to this chronic stress day in, day out, it does affect our body. It does affect at physical level to our body and make changes to our cellular functioning. So again, I'm not saying that live in a world where there will be no stress. That is literally not possible. What I'm saying is that incorporate techniques that will lessen the burden of stress on your body. So doing those deep breathing exercises, doing that meditation, developing a hobby, kind of doing yoga, all of those things can definitely lower the stress burden. And you don't have to do it for an hour or 2 hours, just 10, 15 minutes each and every day. That is what is needed. And your body will definitely start functioning better. And then comes the, like the exercising piece of it, like where again, some kind of body movement. I don't even call it exercising. I call it body movement. Okay. Because exercising is like kind of difficult for a lot of people. I'm sure your listeners, they are doing much more exercising and more into more fitness than anybody else. But again, body movement, walking, jogging, running, anything that you do, again, is going to support your body.
That's awesome. So I love that. So really just kind of take care of the things that you can most easily control. Number one, what's going into your body from a nutrition standpoint. All right. Cut out the dairy, cut out the gluten, cut out the processed sugars and the processed foods. Start eating, more green leafy vegetables, more cruciferous vegetables, more colorful vegetables. Start adding in good sources of protein, good sources of fat. Then start to look at your stress. How are you managing your stress? Start to add in maybe some like meditation or some breathing or some journaling, things to help you manage your stress. And then also make sure that you're exercising as well to not only, for your overall health and function, but also from a stress management standpoint. That's awesome. What I love about this is these are things that everybody can do. You're not talking about like, hey, you need to get rid of all the cleaning supplies in your house and only use, these super high natural cleaning supplies that, don't have, any toxins or anything like that. You're saying, no, just start with the really simple things, what you're eating, manage your stress, make sure you're moving. And that in and of itself sounds like you're going to be knocking out a lot of the potential culprits that could be stimulating these antibodies that are creating Hashimoto's.
Absolutely. The lifestyle is a foundation. And I believe that at least 60% of people, if they just do these foundational lifestyle changes, they will see an improvement in their body. They will feel better. Their quality of life will get better. It obviously takes time. You might not see this difference in a day or two, but if you do these things for 4 to 6 weeks, you will see a difference in the body. So these foundational things are good. A lot of people are going through these fancy things of, buying organic and buying everything which is very clean around them and fancy supplements and things. Yes, they do play a role, but if their lifestyle is not good, if they're eating trash, buying an organic food, which is, not good quality, have a high amount of sugars, that just defeats the purpose, right? So a lot of people buying into these fads. What I tell people is that just look at the ingredients, know what food is good for you, not what, the labels are saying. So it's very important to do that. So eat good. Eat a good variety of, vegetables and natural foods. And then beyond that, yes, there might be another 30 to 40% of people which might not improve with just these foundational things. And that's where, I recommend then going to the more advanced levels of doing the testing or figuring out what else is going on. That's where you might need more advanced detox protocols or supplements and things.
Sure. Yeah. Because like you were saying, it's usually multiple root causes, but it sounds like, these 3 steps will at least address at least 2 or if not more of the root causes, 2 or 3 of the root causes from, the food sensitivities, the nutritional insufficiencies and the stress, but there might be some toxins, there might be some, like viral bacterial things going on that like you're saying, all right, then you can start to dive deeper into that. So that makes total sense. Dr. Gupta, this was an absolutely fascinating conversation. Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Absolutely. So again, I feel people learn on different ways. So that's the reason I've created this ecosystem by sharing knowledge the way people love. So on our website, we have a very active blog. I have written research-based blog, several information people can go. The website is anshulguptamd.com. People can learn a lot of good information about there. I have a very active YouTube channel for people who want to listen and watch. The handle is Anshul Gupta MD. Again, we share a lot of short videos about things people can do right now to improve their Hashimoto's and thyroid. We're on Instagram, where people can find us again on Anshul Gupta MD. My book is available on Amazon. Again, very easy read. It's not one of those textbooks where you need a lot of medical backgrounds. The book has been written to help you to understand what is going on in simple language and give you actionable steps, which you can take right now to improve your condition. The book name is Reversing Hashimoto's, and again, available on Amazon, so people can buy it over there. Again, research-based information. So again, I don't want to feel people just to go with my word, what I'm saying. I have at least more than 150 references over there to back, what information I have shared in the book. So all of those places, people can find us and, get more information and educate themselves.
That's amazing. Dr. Gupta will put all of those links in the show notes for this episode. The question that we like wrapping up with for all of our guests is, what is your definition of health?
But for me, the definition of health is that if you are living your life to the optimal level, which you feel you can achieve, where you can wake up every morning, feel that, okay, well, today is a day and you're looking forward to that day of doing certain things. And then where you are enjoying your life without any hesitation or without any inhibitions. If you can do that, that's for me is the health that everybody should achieve.
I love it. Fantastic. Dr. Gupta, this was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise with us today. It's practical, applicable information that, like you said, affects so many people, not just here in the US, but worldwide. So thank you for the work that you're doing and sharing it with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Wow, that was an awesome conversation with Dr. Anshul Gupta. I mean, the information that he is sharing is not only relevant to so many people, but powerful for so many people. So if you know of anybody who has Hashimoto's disease, or if you yourself have experienced Hashimoto's disease, are experiencing Hashimoto's disease, definitely take what Dr. Anshul Gupta is saying to heart. Look into his website, his blog that he has, his YouTube channel. Give him a follow on Instagram and check out his book on Amazon. All the links for all of that are in the show notes and in the description below this video and below this podcast. So definitely share it with somebody that you know would be able to benefit from this information, and check it out yourself if you believe you would benefit as well. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.